tell the audience about how you got started in real estate.
Welcome to the Masters in Real Estate podcast with your host, Tanner Webster.
Let's get into this. So welcome to the show. Thanks for coming. And I'm excited for you to teach me how to start a credit fund.
And I think we're both learning.
Perfect. So you started off buying crack houses, like 2 to 4 units it was the Northeast, wasn't it? Or where was it?
Yeah, Connecticut.
Yep. Okay. So what made you want to start doing credit? Was it anything in particular, or you just like being a loan shark, or how does that work?
Definitely like being a loan shark. I think it was part of a broader, just sort of always trying to go upstream, right? So I was never a big fan of, I am a broker in Connecticut for market visibility, but I never was one of those guys, like there's always direct to seller guys on Twitter, right? And they can sweet talk people who I can't talk to. Good for them. And so, I always like dealing with equity that had the gun to their head. Someone who had to transact, right?
Yeah.
And so I was going to a lot of like Connecticut's judicial foreclosure state. So going to a lot of those sort of auctions. I mean, I sort of got lucky, I guess. One of the banks that had an auction that got stayed by a bankruptcy, their attorney hit me up basically and said, "Hey, would you want to buy this loan?" And so I was like, "Oh, this seems pretty smart. Like, we're going upstream of where I usually end up, which is the foreclosure sale." And it's not like as competitive as I've been to foreclosure sales in like Brooklyn and shit like that in New York. They're very competitive. Like 75 people show up. It's crazy. Connecticut's not nearly as competitive, but there's still competition. It's kind of not my thing. So it seemed like a good way to sort of go upstream of the distress that I was chasing.
Okay. And do you do all of your stuff in Connecticut, or is it nationwide now?
So on the credit side, there's kind of two sides to the house. There's the performing side where we've lent in, got to be at least 25 states at this stage of the game. So that side of the house, we're looking to put money out. We have back leverage. We're looking to get the money back, right? We're not looking to get real estate on that side of the house. And then there's my side of the house, which is the distressed credit side. And we are generally playing for real estate. And so because we're generally playing for real estate, we like to keep it local. So to date, we've only bought loans in Connecticut and New York.
How do you avoid being known as like the loan to own guy? Because there's so many bridge and construction lenders that it's like they don't say it, but like that is their goal, to own the real estate. And those guys get a lot of scale, but like, how do you avoid that situation with borrowers?
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, I don't. So my partner Ricardo runs the performing side, and he's nicer than I am. So I think that people get to know us via one channel or the other. It doesn't happen that often that there's someone who's on my side who needs to go over to the performing side because they need a loan done. It just doesn't really happen. So yeah, I would say that that's kind of the way that we've done it so far. Now, if someone was going to Google me, they would see, oh, this guy buys loans to get the real estate. But we actually don't originate loans to get the real estate, right? And I think that's an important distinction. And anytime with our balance sheet that we're doing, hey, this guy needs a loan to do whatever project, we are not trying to get it.
And are you like asset class agnostic in that, or are you doing like industrial, retail? Let's see.
Yeah. So we've tried to get more, because we have back leverage. There are things we can and cannot do. We've tried to broaden that credit box to encompass things like industrial. We have done industrial loans. I would still say that like multi, and in particular smaller multi, is sort of our bread and butter on that side of the house. And like SFR, like people who are doing like SFR aggregation kind of shit in the Southeast. I will say on my side of the house, on the distressed side, the buy box is just like, so we bought loans on the secondary against funeral homes, against industrial, single family, multifamily, trying to think, mixed use, like really kind of, I've tried to do a couple of office deals, although we haven't had one hit yet. So yeah, I mean, there's on my side of the house, it's like super agnostic because we are generally not able to put those deals in one of our existing lines, right? So I am basically, every time I'm doing one of those, spinning up the debt capital, it's probably somebody we've done it with before, but that particular deal, we're spinning up debt capital just for that deal. Nobody really does NPL lines. It's sort of it doesn't really exist.
When you say like doing a deal with someone that you've already done a deal with, I'm assuming that's like a bank or a creditor. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. So there's really not a lot of banks that do NPL lines. So we have banks that do our performing line. I like the performing side of the house that do our back leverage on that side of the book. On my side of the book, there's not really a bank that's going to do. Now we have a lot of bank counterparties in the sense that I buy the loans from banks, but banks will generally not do back leverage on a non-performing loan. Even the ones that do back leverage will not do back leverage on a non-performing loan.
Do you think, is that just kind of like we already saw someone get burned on this, so like we're going to let someone else take care of it? Or like, do you know why that happens?
I think it ultimately comes down to they like to see that you're doing shit with interest paid current, so that so that they know how they're getting paid. Right.
Okay.
They don't like the idea of getting paid just off of like reserves on your balance sheet. They don't like the idea of like and some of my back leverage, they will want like 6, 9, 12 months of interest reserve up front. But I think for a bank, they're kind of like, well, I'll give you an example, right, of a deal that would scare a bank. Like 50 LTV. There's a lot of examples, but let's the one that's germane to this, right? So 50 LTV loan, 18% default rate, and you or I would say, like, this is a killer deal. Like, who wouldn't want to lend? Who wouldn't want to lend half of that, 50% than 25%?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question is a bank, because even though they're lending, let's say they're lending you the money at prime flat, right, which is like 8.5 today. That's 10-point spread. That's a massive spread, but because it's kind of coming via, it's sort of a pick sort of thing, right? Because you're just kind of, it's an accrual thing where you're just sort of eating more of the equity over time. It's not paid current cash. And so they look at it and go, well, here's an asset that doesn't generate revenue in cash that, is ultimately a lawsuit. Kyle's over here buying a lawsuit, and we're financing this shit show. Like, what's wrong with us, right? So that's the bank's perspective on that kind of thing, is that you don't have money coming in, so how are they getting paid? Is kind of it's a dumb way of looking at it, but it is how they look at it.
Have you ever looked at, this is kind of like, it's like the turtles all the way down thing, but like, have you looked at, well, I was going to say, have you looked at someone, like giving you maybe a third party doing a warehouse line on your NPLs? Like, have you ever, like, would you, if you could, lever those, or would you not?
I mean, I do lever them. I basically always lever them.
Okay.
There's some rare exceptions to that. Like, if you think, I'm actually working on one right now that I might do unlevered because it's looking like it's going to be like a battle. And, you don't want to be like, as a great example, right? In today's environment, or a lot of the deals that I'm running down are maturity defaults, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put myself in that same spot if it's going to be a lengthy battle, right? So you want to be smart with leverage, but generally speaking, I do use it. And it's always just like one-off, right? So it's not like I have, on the performing side of the house, you got something that fits the box, it goes in a line. Perfect, job done. On my side of the house, there's a lot of degrees of freedom. And so it's not the case that we have just an open-ended line we can put the shit in. So because of that, I basically have to run down, and I have a list of guys we've worked with in the past, and some of them will just pass for reasons that don't make a lot of sense to me. Like, maybe this particular kind of collateral, we don't like it. Or a great example, we Googled this borrower's name and he's a piece of shit. Like, you see shit like that, right? And so you just need a lot of friends in this space so that you can find somebody who will say, oh yeah, this is great. And when I say this is great, you're talking about like 60 LTV on a look through, and rates that are like generally a little bit higher than like bridge rates. This seems obvious. And a lot of times, like, there's between them and losing $1 of principal frequently, right? The structure is like this. They have to get through my equity. They have to get through the borrower's equity. They have to get through a borrower's guarantee, and they have to get through my guarantee. So there's like no way they're going to lose $1 on this shit. And if you look at some of the players, it's not NPL back leverage, so sure. But if you look at some of the big, like, publicly traded banks that have like a good sized lending finance business, they actually tell you, you know, what they reserve for it today, and also like the historical loss. So like you look at this line of business for banks, historical losses for most of the players in the space is 0, and they're reserving like 5 to 10 basis points for it going forward. You have to be a little bit smarter than the average bear to do it. And it's a little bit weird when the first couple times, but like it's a great risk adjusted return for the guys who do the note on note financing is what it's called.
Yep. You mentioned this one that you're looking at might be a battle. What makes it a battle?
The borrower is an attorney.
That does make it a battle.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What I wouldn't originate a loan like that, but these guys did. So hey, get on it.
So what? I mean, there's lots of things that can go wrong. Like, I mean, by the time that you see a loan, like an NPL, a lot of stuff already has gone wrong. So like, what are the hardest hurdles to overcome? Because you've got like mechanics liens, you've got crazy borrowers, crazy tenants. Like, what's your biggest battle that you have with
the
these?
most dangerous, and this is not only true for me and what I do, but you know, it's true for anyone who's a first lien mortgage lender, right? Anybody who's lending against real estate collateral, the biggest and scariest thing that can happen to you is that there's basically someone, they kind of go hand in hand, right? So someone gets ahead of you in terms of priority, right? And that can happen. That's generally a municipality sort of thing, right? Because even a federal tax lien or something is going to be junior to you, or subsequent right is what we would say in terms of lien holders. But like a municipality could slap the borrower with a massive fine that actually is prior in right to your mortgage lien, right? So I'll give you a very real example. A borrower is a slumlord who's running the properties like that, and has gotten in such bind with the town or the city or whatever it is, that they have decided the apartment building is uninhabitable, and so they have taken all the folks and relocated them to a hotel while they set up alternative housing, and the hotel bill is going to attach to the real property as a relocation lien. Yeah. So that is probably, and that's a twofer. That's a twofer from the perspective of not only are you now, you know, junior to this probably pretty big municipal lien, but the collateral's vacant. Right? So it's this double whammy of, okay, now there's a couple $1,000,000 ahead of you in the stack, and the collateral worth way less because the town kicked everybody out.
So how do you navigate that then? Is it just like you don't touch that loan, or is it like
generally, yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I will tell, and I can see this thing coming from a mile away, and it's like it's a very familiar pattern. I mean, it's in Connecticut anyways. It's usually out of state ownership that's asleep at the switch that raised retail money to do something they probably shouldn't have. And so, you know, I will tell the current creditor, I'll say, hey, listen, this could happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen. And I've seen it happen. And just so you know, the instant it happens, it's not like there's not going to be a retrade. I'm out. Like, there's no price.
Yeah.
There's no price.
Yeah.
I would pay. You could give the shit to me and I don't want it.
Yeah.
So I had one of these situations that hasn't hit yet, but I basically told them, like, it's bad enough in terms of, because I watch land records and I see things hit. So they're in the early innings of like, oh, here's a $10,000 fine. Oh, here's a $20,000 fine. Like, they're in the early innings of this thing, but before the end of the year, I think like the actual hammer is gonna drop. And at that point, like, yeah, nothing to do with it. So I told them, because I was sort of doing my diligence and I was seeing these things, and I said, well, we're either going to do this thing before the end of the quarter, or we're not going to do it, because I just don't have a bid anymore. And so, they're going to run it. They're going to find out if they're going to be the lender.
Man, that sounds terrifying. So what is your due diligence process? Like, we'll say I'm a regional bank or a local bank, and I've got a guy who's just completely screwed me, and I call Kyle and I want you to buy this note for me. How does that process go?
So I like to, and this is kind of a sourcing question as well, right? Because what are the types of things I run down? I do not run down shit where I can't bid 90 something, generally speaking.
You're talking percent of the loan. So if it's $1 million loan,
and in particular percent of principal, right?
Yep.
So the principal, so we would say UPB, which is the unpaid principal balance. So today's principal balance, I like to chase shit where I can be in the 90s on it. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward, right? You're a credit guy at a regional bank. You don't know me. We're not buddies outside of this. You are not going to stick your neck out in committee for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't want you to have to. I don't want that to be the situation. And if you come in and you're trying to pay 70 cents or even 80s on a lot of shit, right, you're going to have to stick your neck out for me in committee to get the deal done. Because someone in committee is going to say, couldn't we just get more money if we foreclosed on the guy? You might, but the fact of the matter is, like, to go my way at that point, somebody's going to have to take a bullet in committee. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing, right? I would look at the deal and I would say, okay, just like price per pound, am I going to be in the 90s on this? And if I am, then I'm going to go ahead and do the actual underwrite. And my underwrite basically looks at two things, and I want to be happy.
Sorry, I want to pause real quick.
Yeah.
When you look at unpaid principal balance, like $1 million loan, we'll say it accrues at 10% a year or whatever. What is that unpaid principal that you're looking at? Is it like if they haven't made any payments and that loan has accrued to 1.1 million? Is that what you care about, just principal?
It's just principal.
Just principal. Okay.
Generally speaking, right? When you're you're a creditor who has some non-accrual shit on their balance sheet, right? You've already marked the principal down if you're a bank.
Okay.
So you basically already reserved for some kind of a loss on this. And so that's always kind of the relevant number is the principal piece of it. Now, what you're talking about would be called the payoff, right? Which is like the full freight. So that's everything. And something I have noticed, right, is a lot of banks actually don't read their own loan docs when they put a payoff together. This is super common. So you'll see, and I've seen so here's the funniest one ever. So I was buying this was in 2022. So I was buying a loan. It wasn't even in payment default, right? They were making the contract rate payments, but they were in foreclosure because they hadn't paid their sewer bills. So they owed something like $100,000 plus 25. So they probably owed like 125 grand sewer bills plus legal to collect the sewer bills. And because the sewer utility is a pseudo governmental thing, right? They have a super priority. So they were foreclosing, and they were foreclosing out not only the first lien, but also a second lien and the equity, right? So they were going to, against on a $4 million piece of collateral, right? This $125,000 position was going to basically wipe the stack. And so I saw this and I reached out to the first lien and I said, hey, I'll buy this off you. And, let's, you don't have to deal with this dumb bullshit. Right. Did that and ended up clearing the rest of the stack myself after I paid the first lien guys off. We're sorting the mechanics of it. Right. But, that's kind of like, that's sort of what that looks like.
Okay. And so back to the underwriting question.
Oh, wait. Sorry. I missed the part where they didn't read their loan docs.
Oh, yeah.
In the course of doing my diligence, I read the loan docs. The loan had been in maturity default for 3 years and no one noticed.
That's awesome.
So I'm over here calculating the full payoff, and I'm like, these guys have literally been racking the default rate for 4 years, whenever it was, right? And so I went back to the maturity default and charged the borrower the default rate, which, on a whatever loan, it basically increased the payoff by like 50%.
That's good.
And I called them up and I said, "Hey, this is the payoff," and they said, "You can have it." So great example, right? You would think somebody in servicing would be reading docs or have on their calendar when something matures, and they didn't. Anyways,
okay. So back to the original question before I took you on a huge side tangent. So I bring you this loan. Kyle, please help me. How do you look at this?
Yep. So I look at that first and I try to figure whether or not I would be interested in paying and how do I know that I'd be interested in paying 90s, right? And the way you think about that, the way that I think about it is there's one of two avenues that you can run down with this kind of thing, right? Either you're going to get what I would call a credit outcome, aka you're not going to end up with the fee simple interest. You're just going to get paid off. And you can get paid off by a sale. You can get paid off by a foreclosure auction. You can get paid off by a refinance, right? All kinds of shit. I mean, the guy might win the lottery and pay you off. There's a lot of ways you can get paid off, right? And so you want to be happy if you get paid off, right? And so I look at the default rate basically, right? And what is the full payoff and what kind of discount am I getting? When I like to see that I'm going to make kind of a team's return and payoff unlevered. Because, it's a risky thing to do. There is probably going to be some kind of litigation in terms of enforcement of the loan. And you want to make sure that you're getting compensated for that risk if there is a credit outcome. Now, I generally don't buy things that have that are going to have credit outcomes, right? And the reason for that is you're John Smith at ABC Bank, and you probably know better than I if it's going to pay off, right? And so when the shit you want to sell me is the shit that's not going to pay off, right? Because on your side of it, your boss is going to be like, Jeff, like, nice work. And so you're going to keep the shit that you think is going to pay off, right? Shit that you don't think is going to pay off, that's the shit you're going to try to sell me, right? So then so then the second avenue, not a credit outcome, what I would call a real estate outcome or an REO outcome, right? That kind of outcome, then the question is more of a basis question, right? It's if I pay X and I figure it's going to take 18 months to get title, what I think it's going to take, right? Plus my legal, generally speaking, plus whatever taxes and other senior sort of shit is going to accrue in the meantime, right? The summation of these things is my basis. And so the question is, would I be happy 18, 24, however many months in the future I think it's going to take to get title, right? Would I be happy owning this thing at this basis in this future? And if the answer to that question is yes, and I'm going to make a teens unlevered return in a credit outcome, right? Then it becomes okay, this is a good deal, right? I'll do this deal.
How do you work? Do you worry about like borrowers damaging the collateral? Because like if you're going to get foreclosed on, like I don't really care about the asset anymore. Like I might let some homeless guys come in here and like burn it down, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
so
how do you factor that in?
That's a great question. And that's kind of like that nightmare scenario that I described where the town comes in and relocates everybody, right?
Yeah.
Very similar sort of thing. So what you find happens frequently in these situations is especially someone who's maybe their equity cushion is running low, right? Or they don't have like they can't sell it, they can't refi it, right? They're in one of these positions. Another way that could happen, right? Without the equity cushion, maybe my position is 50 LTV, but there's an IRS lien below me for the rest of it, right? Okay. You're playing against somebody who's got nothing to lose. And that's always a dangerous spot because like you're saying, right, they could just let the collateral go to shit. Now, generally speaking, those sorts of folks are not, they're not vindictive from the perspective, they're not going to actively damage the collateral intentionally with the intention of doing you. And the reason for that, right, is that a lot of the shit that I buy has either an explicit personal guarantee, right? It is recourse, or it's non-recourse with some carve-outs. Right. Okay. And I make clear to people out of the gate that I would use the carve-outs. Like if you think that you can play this game free, you cannot. Right. Yeah. I would use the carve-outs against you if you make them. So what you see more common than someone actively trying to impair you in terms of by damaging the collateral, right, what you see is people just running it into the ground, trying to run as close to 100% operating margin as possible until the gravy train pulls out of the station, right? That is the most common play.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Someone saying my basis is toast. I'm not going to recoup it on a sale. Let's see. I'm collecting $40,000 a month in rent. Let's see how much of that $40,000 I can put in my pocket.
Of course. Yeah. That's fascinating. When these guys, so John, whatever my last name is at ABC Bank.
It could be Tanner. It could be Tanner. I don't know why.
It'll be Tanner.
Tanner is a credit officer of some kind at ABC Bank.
So when they talk to you, are they like, I'm screwed, like I need your help? Or is it like, no, this guy will pay you off tomorrow?
No. So they never, right. So the closest you will ever get to a loan to, and this is another funny part of this game, right? So let's say I had never been a counterparty of ABC Bank in the past, right? And I'm calling you up, right? And I was saying, hey, Tanner, does ABC Bank have any non-accrual real estate secured shit they want to unload, right? And if I just call you, or we get, let's make it more aggressive. We get lunch, right? Someone has introduced us. We're getting lunch, right? I'm not even making the bank pay for it. We're getting lunch, and I say, hey, do you have anything? You're going to say no. Of course not. Like, we don't make that loan. And I'm like, oh, what? Sorry I asked. But, and this is where it gets fun, right? When I see that you have a bad loan, I'll call you up. So this is the next week. Hey, Tanner, I see you guys have a bad. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Oh, no, that guy, well, his dad died and his hamster's in the hospital. And yeah, he's giving us the runaround. And you know what? We would like to be done with him. So that's frequently the way that conversation goes, right? If I come to you just out of nowhere and say, hey, do you have anything? Your default is going to be to say, no. If I come to you with something specific and I say, hey, would you like to be done with this? You'll say, interesting. What's your price?
Yeah.
Right. So that's, and even with, this is where it gets funny, right? Even with repeat counterparties, this kind of thing happens. They don't call me, right? They'll just start foreclosure. And then I'll see it and I'll say, hey, like, why didn't you call me? And they're like, damn it, we should have called you. And I'm like, I don't know, man, next time. And they never do. Right. Yeah. So it's common to put on a face and say, we don't have any non-performing loans. How dare you even suggest that we would? And the reality is, if you have something specific that you have a question about, then they'll engage and they'll be open about it.
Okay, let's talk more about the sourcing then. So you've got a couple different methods of sourcing. How do you find out, like, if these guys have non-performing loans? Like, I'm Tanner at ABC Bank. I said I didn't have anything. You know that I have something. How do you know that?
So there's a lot of different channels you can look at to try to ascertain this kind of thing, right? And banks have to disclose this kind of thing at like a quarterly and I think monthly, depending on what the metric is, sort of tenor to regulators. So even if it's not a publicly traded bank, right, they still have to report a lot of shit to the FDIC. So you can see, generally to the dollar, how much a bank has in different categories of non-accrual, which just means shit that's not paying, right? You can see that, but that doesn't really even get you that much closer, right? Because you need an address. You need an address and you need a borrower's name. And so the way that I get to that shit, and there's some, I think on my Twitter, under my highlights tab, I have a tweet that more or less describes some of my core sourcing technology, right? But we use, and years ago, I mean, I had written code that did this for me, but it still left a lot of manual steps because these are court filings. You still have to go in and read them to determine what's the address, who's the borrower, how much is the debt, blah, 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 all this shit. We're at a point now where we're using OpenAI's API to basically read the court filings for us. So every day I get an email with the new, and we scrape every single lawsuit that gets filed in the whole state. And then we trim it back to the things that I care about. Right now, there's only a few actionable things per week, but this is kind of where it gets really interesting, right? Because I use that system, and we're adding some other channels to it, like tax delinquency code enforcement actions, right?
Mm.
So basically all these things run in, this is the tippy top of the funnel, right? And I'm trying to distill down to commercial mortgages against collateral that I wouldn't mind owning, right? That has a counterparty. I mean, I've bought things out of securitizations, but generally speaking, you want a bank or a debt fund as a counterparty.
Okay.
Securitizations are a bit of a disaster. So that's the way that I look at it, right? I'm looking down these different distress channels to try to find something that I would pay find some paper I would pay 90 something for.
Okay. Let's go through, let's talk about your fund now. So you've launched a fund. Were you previously doing these as SPVs, or how were you doing this before?
So it's a good question. On the NPL side of the house, it was our capital, because it's a very difficult thing to get people comfortable with. And when I say our capital, I have two partners. So I have a partner who basically, Ricardo, who basically runs the credit side, like the performing credit side of the house. And then I have we have a third partner. His name is Joe, who's the kind of like real estate guy, right? So I sort of sit in the middle by virtue of being the distressed guy.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we were self-funding all of these deals, which is one of the reasons we do use leverage, right? It's a little bit of a big ask. We're all 30-ish. It's a little bit of a big ask to buy a $12 million NPL with no, straight up equity.
Yeah.
So anyways, right, that's how historically we had funded the thing. And the reason for that is because it is such a weird thing to pitch people on, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a real estate deal. It's not really a credit deal a lot of times. It's something other. And you're ultimately buying a lawsuit, right? And so the pitch, at a point, someone would figure that out, right? There's no, you can't obscure that. And eventually someone's going to be like, wait a minute, what's this? You guys are allocating a lot of money for legal. What's that about? So, the one-off raise for that kind of thing was totally not worth it. And some of the deals we were doing were because they were small, right? We're talking like $1 to $5 million deals. They were very, very offsides in terms of the real estate outcome could be like a big winner. And so, being kind of greedy, not wanting to have to really explain to people how this worked because it was painful. We self-funded basically everything on the NPL side until January when we kicked the fund off.
Okay, so you start the fund. Who are you trying to attract on this? Is it like everyday investors? Is it family offices, Korean pension funds? Like, how does that look?
I think everyone wants Korean pension funds because they have an incredible cost of capital. I mean, I ultimately spent years on the street before this, right? So, I mean, I know how this thing works. You are, as a first-time fund, you're not going to attract institutional money. And so we have not tried to attract institutional money. I tweet about what we're doing on Twitter as I think a nice kind of like top-of-funnel introduction to how this works. But realistically, we're not going to get institutional money until the track record is at like 2 or 3 years, right? So we have proper third-party fund admin, proper third-party fund auditor, all that shit, with the intention that we are laying the groundwork to eventually raise some institutional dollars. But today it's just fully people who, I mean, my ideal person is somebody who would like read my Twitter feed and be like, I like this guy. He's a bit of a shithead, but I like him.
That's it. That's attracting the same investors. So
that's right. I want people where I'm like, that guy's calling, like, I want to shoot shit with that guy. I don't want people involved in the thing where like, I don't like him.
Yep.
Right. And honestly, it's funny because, I mean, I actually pitch it a lot like this. And I think it probably got us less. It's probably not great for the dollars in the difference, but it is great from the, whenever I go into Manhattan, like I can meet with somebody cool who's invested in the fund, right? Which is kind of my metric, right? My metric. And I think that is the metric. If somebody's calling, am I like, shit, second ring picking up, right? That's the kind of investor I'm trying to appeal to.
Yeah. And so with the fund, how do you allocate, like, is it 25% NPL, 25% performing? Like, how does that work?
So right now, we don't have anything like that. And the reason for that is because credit markets are cyclical, right? So like right now, if you looked, like we're getting paid way, way better to put money out on the NPL side of the house. And I'm talking like, we're doing a deal right now. I want to say it's not a big deal, but it's like $1.5 million-ish of, it's like 3 loans that we're buying from one of our longtime local bank counterparties, right? And it's like across the pool, it's like 50 LTV, and the penalty rate is like, I don't know, 15% or something, right?
Yeah.
A couple of them are 18, one of them is 12, like it blended ends up being like 15. It's just like, we're putting money out at 15 with maybe even like some late fee kickers, so you can get it up to like 18, 19 unlevered, right?
Yep.
So that, it doesn't make sense to lend money to people at 12 or even 13 when you can be out here doing shit in sub 50 LTV and earning a teens unlevered return,
Yeah.
right? It just doesn't make sense. So we don't have strict guidelines around that kind of allocation thing, right? We're just trying to, on a risk-adjusted basis, do shit that we think is going to be worth it. So
would you ever look at like maybe one-off deal is the wrong word, but like a one-off deal that it's just like, hey, this is a great deal. It's not distressed. Like, we're not buying the debt. We're just going to syndicate this as equity. Like, would you ever do that?
So we actually can't do equity deals out of this vehicle.
Okay.
So our
Like, would
fund
you do
docs
that
are,
as a sidecar or something like that? Or like, would you actively look for it? Or is it just like, you just love
it would
debt
have
so much?
to be, so I haven't done an equity deal since January 2020.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think I'll ever do another equity deal, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a bit aggressive to say never ever. I just don't think you're getting paid for that today. Right. I don't think, unless you really had someone who is over a barrel and willing to sell something at like just a cannot lose basis for some reason, and they didn't know you could hire a broker, like you would need, that's the issue with this kind of shit, right? And this is the reason that I don't like equity deals. You need someone who's smart enough to transact, but dumb enough to let you have it at a stupid price. And I just don't run into that many people. If you're running into that person, it's going to be some small dollar bullshit, right? And that's the issue with it, right? If somebody's got an asset that is legitimately, even in a fire sale, worth at least $5 or $10 million, they're not going to let you have it for a great level, right? They're just not. It's just the market's just too. The market is just. I'm generally I'm not a big believer in efficient market sort of shit, but like that person is not going to that's not going to trade, right? That's not
I'd share a same sentiment. Like, with the amount of dollars chasing deals right now, it's hard to get 50% discount on like a pretty good deal, like on the equity side. Okay, so I want to go back to we were talking about me at ABC Bank, and I've got this foreclosure. You find out through your proprietary software that I've got bad loans. Who are you? Who are you calling? Are you just like going on white pages and finding the chief credit officer?
Basically, yeah. It depends on how far along the suit is, right? You always want to hit someone. You want to hit someone who has the shit on their desk. That's the best case scenario. So I usually don't find shit like this where it's like pretty lengthy suit, right? There's an affidavit at some point. Generally speaking, an affidavit is going to be signed by an affiant who works at the creditor, right? Yeah. So you can go into the filings and find that kind of thing. Because I like to catch shit very early, right? I generally don't have that luxury, which means I would just go to the most senior person in credit because they probably have some familiarity with it and say, hey, maybe this is not your problem child, but somebody at the bank is working on this thing. Here's like a quick and dirty about us. I think that I can pay you a price that's 90-ish% of UPB. If that's something that's interesting to you, let's talk. And I don't know how, obviously, like the guys who are doing like the direct to seller shit, right? They're able to find John Smith's phone number or whatever and harass his ass. I don't know somebody's extension at ABC Bank. So I'm usually doing just like a cold email. And then I'll do a couple of follow-ups over the next month. If someone doesn't respond. Yeah.
And how receptive, like, are they pretty receptive on this? Like, I know they said they never make bad deals or anything. Or is it just like, how do those first interactions typically go? Like when you have something?
So usually it's a function of two things. It's a function of, has this bank ever done a note sale before, and how much of a pain in the ass is the borrower. So if those are sort of diametrically opposed ends of this thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you've never done a note sale before, this is going to be a big lift, and it might not be worth me trying to do it, right? I'll tell a funny story that I always tell, right? So I had a bank out of Massachusetts who had responded to a cold email about something and said, we actually have other shit. How would you like to look at our whole fucking non-accrual commercial book? And that's great. Send it over.
Yeah.
So they sent the spreadsheet over, and the whole thing: origination date, maturity date, current rate, non-recourse, the whole thing, right? The whole tape, except the collateral addresses. So I said, all right, that's not super helpful. Yeah, just kick over the one with the addresses. Like an idiot, right? I'm under NDA, like I can't do anything with it. Thinking somebody just made a mistake. Now, they were never going to tell me the addresses. They came back and they said, we will under no circumstances tell you what the collateral is. And I said, okay, but just to be clear, that means I can't bid on this shit. It's like, fucking, you're not going to tell me what it is. How am I supposed to price it? And that was it, right? And so that was a community bank, right? It wasn't even a regional, right? It was a community bank that had never sold a loan before, that had no idea what they were doing, and for whatever reason didn't want to tell me what the collateral was. Okay, fine. That's the kind of shit that you run into. They clearly didn't have to the other side of this thing, right? They didn't have a borrower who was annoying enough that they could break through whatever their dumb internal rule was, right, to tell me what the property was, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of that interplay between what has the bank done historically? Have they ever done this? How annoying is this particular loan, right? That's the interplay that dictates how quickly something, right? If the borrower is really annoying and the bank has sold loans before, it's going to happen. If the borrower is not so annoying and they think they're going to get paid off somehow and the bank hasn't sold loans before, probably no deal.
Yeah. I'm always blown away, like every time I talk to a bank about, or any sort of lender, and it's just like, so when do you foreclose? And they're just like, if the borrower's giving it like a good effort, like we'll work with them. I'm like, that's crazy. But
so something that I see a lot, and this is a credit union specific thing. And I don't think I've ever bought a loan from a credit union now that I think about it, because they're too nice. They're like, right, exactly. They're like, if you took like the mean parts of a bank, aka the parts of the bank, they're like, here's a late fee, you got to pay your bills, blah blah blah. If you took those and just excised them from a bank, you'd be left with a credit union. And so some of these credit unions, I will see a foreclosure that they even you decided you can get the knives out of this guy. Like, obviously, you could sell it to me, and I'll reach out and I'll say, hey, how what do you think about selling me? No, we can't do that. His son's got accounts at the bank. I'm just like, how much money does his son have? This is like a multi-million-dollar loan, and if his son has so much money, why has he not bailed pops out?
Sure.
So they will do shit for these tiny ass deposit accounts where I'm just like, who gives a shit? They're still going to bank with you, even if I get the gloves out on daddy. And they do. they really care about it. It's weird. I've never done a credit. I've seen credit union deals. I've never done them because they're afraid I'm going to hurt somebody, I guess.
So would you say your target bank demographic is like regional, big bank, small bank?
Yes.
Like, what is that?
It's regional. Yeah. Regional banks are the best, in my experience, counterparties, because they are sophisticated enough to realize that this is a good thing and to be able to actually transact, right? But they have enough breadth that they do have bad loans, right? So, I mean, somebody, and you see this a lot lately, and it's becoming a problem because of the sell-off in rates, right? So people who had banks that had no lending side of the house, right? And were just plowing the shit into bonds. I mean, now they've got to, if they have to ever mark that shit, or if they go to sell the bonds, they're going to be in a bad spot. But you want a bank like a regional that actually regularly does originate loans, right? Some of these community banks, they just don't put money out, right? So that is kind of your ideal player, a regional. Whereas like a national, the reason that's why communities are tough. A national is tough because, yeah, they're definitely out there putting money out, but like, who do you call? And like, how many layers of bullshit are you going to have to get through before you get to somebody who cares, right? For them, it's even more of an institutional kind of like no-no because, think about how many layers of approval they're going to have to get to do this thing. Like, eventually you're just like, it's not worth it. Not worth it for me, and whoever internally is running this down, they're going to have to make like their full-time job for the next 6 months. Right. So that's why regionals are a really good target.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll bring it home with this because I think this will be a fun one. Earlier you said you've got like a big line item for just legal bills, like you're just basically buying lawsuits. How do you equip yourself? Like, I have been in 0 lawsuits in my life, and I've been like not very close. And even when I'm not very close, I'm still just terrified. So, but you are just running towards the flame, it sounds like. So
it became clear very early. So way before the credit thing was a twinkle in anybody's eye, when I was just buying like fee simple real estate straight up, it became very, very apparent that I was going to get sued at some point. So it went from 100%, very, very obvious. And it went from and it is just how it works, right? Affordable housing, C-class, it's some of the it's sort of the worst parts of real estate broadly. So you have people who are not taking the best care of themselves, not taking the best care of their kids, not taking the best care of their apartment, not driving around with an unregistered vehicle that runs sometimes. Like, it is a confluence of factors that are going to result in someone suing, in you getting into a lawsuit at some point, right?
Yep.
Probably that was one of the most palpable sort of like, oh shit, I'm getting close moments, right? And this is not the happiest story, but I had foreclosed on somebody, right, and ended up with their building, and okay, fine. The foreclosure was straightforward for a little like that. But I got a call from an ambulance chaser saying, hey, my client got real sick in this building because of mold, because of whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, why don't you shoot me an email? Because I wanted the thing written down to really get the allegations right. And lo and behold, it was like 2 years before I had foreclosed on the guy, right? The guy was a slumlord. And we were doing a serious value add to the building because it was not habitable. And, this person that was claiming some pretty big damages as a result of their exposure to mold or whatever, what have you, right? And so I hit them back and I said, hey, I got the guy's number. You can call him. I foreclosed on him. They were not too excited about that. And they left me alone because I clearly had nothing to do with it. But, it was obvious. It was obvious way before it was obvious I was going to get sued. And so I'm a bit of a sicko when it comes to this. I logged a lot the first time I did get sued, and then anytime I was bringing a suit against someone else, I wanted to know what was going on, right? Like, I wanted to actually either read the statute or read the relevant case law or read the practice book. Like, I wanted to appreciate what was happening and why. And that was also kind of just like an outgrowth of how I came to do this, right? I mean, I was buying shit at foreclosure sales, judicial foreclosure sales. You would get into a lawsuit just in one of those, right? You're the high bidder. The guy's going to file some shit to try to not have you buy his apartment building because he thinks that it's worth more than what you paid for it at the foreclosure sale. Blah. So I had a lot of opportunities to dip the toe in way before we actually were like, you know what if we just kind of did litigation shit for a living? And I came to appreciate that you want to sort of be a backseat driver. You want to know what is going on and why and when and where and how. And if you have that familiarity with it, right, you're going to be really, it's difficult to, and I tell people this a lot, the hardest part of this game is getting good counsel. And the reason it's so hard is because everybody, and it's not a sophisticated practice area, to be clear. Creditor rights enforcement shit, like it's not complicated. You're not some legal scholar, right? You're somebody who knows that the whole game is getting from A to B, where B is summary judgment, as quickly as possible. And you're going to run up against a bunch of dilatory bullshit from the equity. That's expected. That's how it works. And how do you bat that down and get to the finish line as quickly as possible to maximize the recovery for the creditors? But if you're going to be an observer of this, right, everything is going to be exciting and new and a science experiment, as one of my partners likes to call it, right? Shit, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. You don't want that, right? You want an attorney who says, this is the game plan. We're going to do it. He's going to try some shit and we're going to knock it down. And here's how, right? So I feel like this is this was a good thing for me to, this was the natural, I was going to get here. It just so happened rather than doing it on the defense side, right? Because of attendant or whatever, right? We're doing it on the offense side. I mean, we don't really have to play any defense these days, but yeah, I mean, like nowadays it is all offense. It's how do we use the loan docs? How do we use various, enforcement incentives that we can, like the guarantee, right? How do we get someone to do what we want them to do using more or less using the legal system? And I guess I was just fucking predestined, right? I mean, the most people are in your camp, which is how do I avoid this, right? And like I said earlier, the reason we couldn't raise money for this strategy is because people had your opinion. They were like, why do you want to be in court? Like, this doesn't seem like fun. And learned to really kind of enjoy it, right? Even for me today, the reason that we're geographically concentrated and focused is because of that. It is so hard to find counsel who get the strategy and who execute, in a way that I find acceptable. If I was to, and I do this periodically, if I buy an NPL in Massachusetts or something, right, I'm going to have to do this again. I'm going to have to hire somebody and see, is this the guy? Right? Oh, is she the one for the job? Oh, maybe not aggressive enough, right? So that is the biggest to me hurdle for people who are new to this. It's not even how do you get debt capital or how do you find deals or how do you whatever. Having found a deal and closed it, who is going to do the enforcement? Because that can make all the difference. I bought a loan in New York, 15 years long, the foreclosure. Not the first thing I did, right? But probably the second thing I did was I fired the attorneys. 15 years, you haven't gotten it right in 15 years? Like, New York is lengthy, I get it, but 50 years, right? So that's a huge, and that's something that makes it dangerous for tourists. You can get into something and the numbers can make sense and the collateral looks fine and the loan's great and the default rate's high. But if you've got shitty counsel, you're going to be here forever. That guy's not, he's billing you monthly, right?
Yeah. So what does a good attorney look like for you? Is it just like an absolute bulldog, or can people be too?
I got torched on Twitter for my views on what a good attorney is. A lot of Twitter got involved. There was a big thing a couple months ago. But so for me, right, and again, this is very, very specific. There's all kinds of litigation, right? There's family law. There's more general sort of business litigation. Most of those other kinds of litigation, you want to stipulate, you want to settle the thing, right? You don't want to go to trial. Trial is outrageously expensive. It takes a long time. You don't want to go to trial. And to be honest with you, on our side of it, we also generally don't want to go to trial. So you want someone who can balance the clock, which is we want to do this as quickly as possible. We want to get to the finish line. Who's balancing that with the fact that the quickest way to get to the finish line is to reach an agreement with the borrower, right? And generally speaking, the agreement that you would enter into, it would be a strict agreement in the sense that they have certain things they have to do to perform so that they can ultimately pay the loan off, ideally within like 12 months, right? That's kind of the upper end of the range in terms of what we would offer someone. Right? So typical agreement would look like this. You have 12 months. During that 12 months, you will remit payments at X rate monthly, due on the 1st, late after the 10th. If you miss any of those payments, right, either judgment enters immediately, meaning that a sale gets scheduled, so an auction, right, or in Connecticut, we have something called strict foreclosure, right? And if there's no equity in the property, right, then title would simply go to the creditor. And so that's the kind of agreement you get someone to agree. Yeah, you get a borrower to agree to a stipulation like that, and then all of a sudden, something that could have been, right, 3-year, 4-year kind of knife fight, you bring it to a head that's acceptable to everyone because the borrower has gotten more time, right? They have hope, and a lot of times, like I'll kick in a reduced payoff, right? I'll say, okay, well, if you perform under this thing and you get to the end and you're going to make the balloon payment, I'll knock something off the payoff, right? And instead of charging 100 cents on the dollar on the principal, I'll charge you 90, right? Whatever it is. So you want an attorney who can do that, but you also want an attorney who appreciates that if the borrower has dicked around for 6 months negotiating that settlement agreement, it's because they're not going to sign it, all right? It's because they're taking the whole thing and using it as a delay tactic, right? So you want someone who is smart enough to appreciate both sides of that thing, right? There's a quick out, which is everybody holds hands and we sing and dance into the sunset. And there's the could be longer out, but more certain out, which is get the knives out, let's go.
Man, that is, I gotta say, that is fascinating. What other kind of carrots can you give to these borrowers? Like, I think you tweeted one time that like, you'll just release it might be personally guaranteed, but you'll just say like, we're good, basically.
Right. So that's
anything else you do?
Yep. So the most on the carrot side of the thing, right? The most potent tools you have in that toolbox are release of the personal guarantee, additional time, reduced rate, reduced principal. Those are sort of the big ones, right?
Yeah.
So someone is going to want. So the problem is, right, that those are effective. If someone doesn't want one of those 4 things, they're not someone you should be fighting with, right? Because they're just a nut.
They're crazy.
Yeah. You see it a lot, right? You see it a lot. Like you'll see someone who collateral's worth 10, full payoff is 15. The foreign lender hates them, is never going to reduce it, right? And, I can step into that thing and knock it down something basis what I paid, right? And still more than what I paid for it. But some people don't even want that, right?
Yeah.
And the PG, some people don't even care about that. And so, you have to be careful who you're ultimately going to pick a fight with, because it could be someone who doesn't listen to any reason whatsoever. And those 4 things don't make a lick of difference to them. They just want to be in this fight. And so that's where it becomes important to do some diligence on whoever the guarantor is or the borrower up front to kind of get a sense, right? And I've seen loans like this where the guy has no equity and he's just committing some of the craziest fraud you can think of. Like he's doing some shit. I don't even know how he came up with it. Like it's wild shit. And the court is on their heels because they're like, this guy is nuts. We don't even know. So you can generally spot that kind of thing because you do some searches. You plug their name, right, and some of their entity names into judicial searches, into like Pacer and this kind of thing, and you can see what sorts of shit they've been up to. And you want to run from that kind of thing, because if someone will sign their name or anybody else's name on something, right? If you're playing with somebody who's going to be a slam ahead of the judge the whole way, right? The judge is going to be smacking them down, but they got some new trick up their sleeve, right? That's another important piece of the diligence process that we didn't get to, which is collateral, yes, loan, yes, but also warm body, borrower, guarantor, what have you. You want to understand where that person's at, because if they have that mindset of, I'm going to do anything to slow this down, right? You generally don't want to fight that person because you can't hold them anything.
And are you leading these conversations with the borrower, or is it the attorney? Like how does the correspondence work?
So it's funny, for years I had this rule, which is that I did not talk to, and generally I'm under an NDA, so I can't anyways, right? I cannot talk to the borrower pre-close.
Yep.
And I had this rule for a long time that even if I wasn't under an NDA that didn't explicitly say I couldn't do that, I would not do it because it's a bad idea. I broke that rule earlier this year, and I regret it because the borrower found a way to blow up the deal. So now I'm back to it. I don't do that. And generally speaking, post-close, I also don't talk to borrowers. we are both represented by counsel in the vast majority of cases, and there's nothing that I can say that's going to add to that conversation meaningfully, and there's nothing that they can say to me that's going to change my mind. Right? The way the post-close dialogue, if you want to call it, goes most of the time, they will get a notice letting them know that there's a new note holder and that payments or whatever correspondence should be remitted to us as the new mortgagee. And then from there, they will usually get another letter, depending on how exactly I want to go with it, basically saying you have a couple of weeks to decide whether or not you want to retain title to this collateral, right? And in the event you do, we should work on a plan so that you can. If you don't, it's also the case that we would accept the deed, and there would probably in all likelihood be releases that would accompany us taking title, right? And so that's sort of what the opening, the volley, if you will, looks like most of the time. And then, and the reason I like that is because that's sort of tight, like you have a couple of weeks to sort this out. They know that unlike the previous creditor, we're not going to listen to a lot of bullshit. We're not going to sit here and listen to your whole life story about why, you haven't paid in 6 months. Like, I don't really care why, right? I want to know if you have an actual plan, and if you do, let's talk about it. And if you don't, that's also fine, because I'll probably just give you a release. So that's typically what it looks like. And that sort of thing happens through counsel. One time, this was last year, rather infamously, there was a borrower who insisted on speaking to me. My attorney said, "This is a bad idea. Like, you don't want to talk to Kyle. He's not gonna want to hear what you have to say." And the guy said, No, I'm not gonna bullshit him. I want to talk to him. Okay, fine. I get added to the call, and I said, "All right, well, tell me what the plan is." And he said, "Oh, well, I got a refi closing in 30 days." And I said, "I mean, do you actually think that I haven't been talking to your previous lender? You told them this a year ago." I don't know. Why would I believe you? Like, why am I the lucky guy who bought it right before the refi? Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, give me something real. Like, if you give me something that's legit, I will entertain it, and we can work this thing out. And he said, "Oh, no, the refi is happening. I'm serious. It is. I'm going to give you another chance, right? Give me something legit, or I'm just going to hang up, and you can go back to talking to my attorney. Like, there's actually no reason for me to be involved in this. No, I'll send you the term sheet. It's definitely going to close. It's going to close 100%. Buddy, you owe $1 million in taxes. You're trying to tell me you have a refi closing and they didn't pull title, and they're okay with that? They know you don't pay your bills. This thing has you've got to lose pennies from this loan on the thing, in addition to the $1 million in taxes. You're trying to tell me there's a lender out there doing perm financing, taking you out of a foreclosure when you owe $1 million in taxes and you're in foreclosure on your first? Oh, who is it? No one's doing that. Tell me who the lender is. He didn't have an answer, right?
Yeah.
That's why I don't, right? Because nobody got anything out of that, right? The guy thought he was going to tell me the same bullshit that the other guys listened to for a year. No. So,
well, I gotta say, this was a lot of fun, and it makes me happy to find someone who found their true calling in life, and that's you.
I want to take that as a compliment.
No, it is. So, Kyle, it's been fun, man. Appreciate you coming on.
No, it was great. It was great coming on. I love bullshitting about this stuff. If anyone wants to talk about this, obviously I can't help but talk about it. I'm on Twitter. It's FinanceGuy725. Probably somewhere around here you can figure out how to spell my name, which is a disaster. I will not do that, but you can find it and copy paste it as well. But yeah, Tanner, thank you for having me. This was great, a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to you launching your credit fund.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, dude.